Capitol Park Hill overlooks the capital, Pretoria. A high school is situated at its southern base, while the fresh produce market is situated to the west. From here, the killer lured many victims across the hill, where the journey turned into a nightmare of rape and strangulation. His killing field stretched from the clubhouse to a water tower, a mere 500 meters away.
The detectives have to collect the physical evidence. The profiler has to interpret the psychological evidence. Sometimes the psychological evidence is tangible, but sometimes it's a feeling, an energy vibration. I was once on a crime scene in Johannesburg where I tried to interpret this energy vibration, and I was fiddling around in the grass when I found a condom that the detectives had not found. A crime scene speaks to you. You have to listen to its story.
This scene will tell a grisly tale of 6 corpses, 3 males, 2 females, and a boy. Festering corpses were piled on top of each other, covered with vegetation. Where police had removed 3 cadavers only 2 days before, a new body was dumped.
We searched this mountain, and about 500 meters east from the crime scene, we found a water tower in which we found traces that somebody was sleeping there. We found the security jacket. Inside the jacket was written the name Sam with a false number. There was 14 crosses marked inside this jacket. We traced this jacket to a security company where we find out that this false number was issued to Samuel Sedino.
The fact that these murders were committed in such rapid succession, and the fact that he left the bodies on exactly the same spot, alerted me to the possibility that he was very possessive about his crime scene. Most serial killers are. Serial killers also return to the crime scene to masturbate and to relive the fantasy, and that's why I knew he would be back very soon.
The fantasy, the conscious fantasy, in other words, that's the one the person can tell you about, or with others what we might refer to the unconscious fantasy, is the driving force that they can't really verbalize, would play a factor. For other ones, that if I think of the ones that I've spoken to, they've said, you know, they were previously arrested for a rape, and thereafter they decided that now they're going to rape and murder. In other words, almost like an anger built up towards females, or as a result of or a particular female, or females in general. For others, they might feel that certain types of people, such as prostitutes, are evil, and it's their responsibility to remove them from the face of the earth.
The serial killer is in total control in his fantasy. We all are in total control in our fantasy lives. Then something happens in real life to make him somehow feel inferior. Then he acts out the fantasy to restore the balance, to make him feel God again. But unfortunately, reality is never as perfect as fantasy. So he keeps on repeating this acting out of the fantasy in order to get it right.
He is omnipotent and in absolute command in his own fantasies. But when his fragile ego or self-esteem is being threatened by any form of rejection or pain, his original childhood agony is triggered, and he suffers the irresistible urge to act out his overwhelming fantasy, which is the only way he perceives to resolve the emotional imbalance.
The fantasy is the blueprint for the actual acting out of the murder. A fantasy can evolve, but the core fantasy would stay the same.
There is a difference between the modus operandi and the signature of a serial killer. The MO accounts for the type of crime, victim type, props used, etc. This MO may change, but the killer expresses himself mentally, leaving a unique psychological signature on every scene. This imprint can evolve as he performs post-death mutilation. If you understand the signature, you can stop him.
It's very important, I think, for a profiler. As a matter of fact, it's crucial for a profiler to decipher the fantasy of the serial killer, because it is unique to that person.
I believe that there's always something driving these people, but I don't always think they themselves know what it is per se. 1 or 2 of them have said, yes, my partner had this fantasy to do this and to do this, and you can see on the crime scenes that they actually did try to do some of those behaviors. But as for this sort of Hollywood image of this well thought out, constructed fantasy, we haven't really found that often in South Africa.
Some serial killers would be more violent towards the victims if the victim does not act out her script that is scripted in the fantasy for her. Now and again there have been cases of a serial killer that actually set a victim free because she just didn't fit.
To track the killer would require a sixth sense.
I wouldn't call myself psychic. I would rather call it cryptothesia. Cryptothesia operates on the same principles as quantum physics. Everything consists of molecules that vibrate at a certain energy level. Any person has the ability to pick up these vibrations. If anyone should visit friends of theirs, and the friends just had a fight, you would pick it up. I had the same ability than most people. I think mine was just a little bit more developed.
This opens up the mind of the profiler and the killer steps in.
The serial killers vary at the rate in which they enter my mind. Sometimes it happens immediately on the crime scene, sometimes it takes a long time. In the Phoenix case, where the serial killer murdered the women in the sugarcane fields, I felt it immediately, and I could actually write and recant what had happened in the very first person. Sometimes the wind alerts me to the serial killer, and sometimes I would be sitting at home on a Sunday afternoon and also be very aware of a serial killer killing. Very few serial killers ever display remorse or a conscience. We get ego-dystonic and ego-syntonic serial killers. Moses Sithole, for instance, is an ego-syntonic serial killer. He has no qualms about what he did. He would brag about it, he feels proud about himself, and he talks about it. Norman Simons, on the other hand, was an ego-dystonic serial killer. His ego, his functioning personality, cannot accept the fact that he, as a teacher, actually killed the young boys. So he would distantiate himself from what he had done and find some kind of excuse for what he had done.
I can't really say that they've ever expressed great remorse for what they did. They might say they're sorry and it was wrong and they shouldn't have done it. But a remorse in the sense of breaking down, crying, feeling guilty, can't really say that I've ever really picked that up in the people that I've interviewed.
Generally, serial killers don't experience any remorse. However, in the case of the Station Strangler, we found signs of undoing, which will indicate remorse. The Station Strangler redressed his victim after he'd killed and sodomized them, which indicated that he felt sorry for them.
We had a team talk and came to the conclusion that the suspect may return the same night to the mountain. We decided to keep observation and requested the task force to do that.
The special task force of the police was deployed on the hill. When a new dawn breaks, someone would be in for a surprise.
Eventually, you get so immersed in the abyss that you cannot distinguish between your own fantasies and those of the serial killers. I remember once being on a crime scene where the brother had killed his sister and sexually molested her. And I could actually feel the lust that he must have experienced when he murdered her. To me, it was a very frightening experience to feel this lust looking at the body of that young woman.
You do often spend a lot of time thinking about these, but I can't say that myself and my colleagues really feel stuck in what we do. Maybe it'll happen one day with a particular case. Without a doubt, that's possible. But again, we always try to keep a sort of a objective distance.
I think one of the major symptoms of post-traumatic stress is nightmares. I did get many nightmares just about every night. I can recall once when I was interviewing the saloon killer, he started telling us about a nightmare, and I stopped him. I took the detective outside, told him the rest of the nightmare, went back in, and Velapi told us the rest of the nightmare as I had it. So I think there were a diffusion of boundaries. When we found the body of the young woman on Capitol Hill, the body was left behind on the exact same spot where previous bodies were left behind. As a matter of fact, this body was quite fresh. She was about a day or two old. And she was covered in maggots. Now, these maggots were left behind on the crime scene by the previous bodies. So I know people are creatures of habit. You know, this is his spot where he feels safe, where he wants to leave the bodies.